Lying upside down on the seabed of Scapa Flow is one of the most iconic battleship dives in the world, the SMS Kronprinz Wilhelm. With a maximum depth of 38 metres and the shallowest parts are only 12, it's also a great depth for recreational divers. This 175 metre long German battleship was scuttled by her own crew on the 21st of June 1919, and today she offers divers an extraordinary journey through naval history. In this video, I'll guide you through the sections every diver should explore on this magnificent wreck. From her massive aft turrets to the famous gun run along her port side, where you can see 7 150mm guns. We'll visit the incredible Armoured Spotting top, from where lookouts observed gunfire during the Battle of Jutland. There's also the incredible sight of one of the forward guns which has been ripped out of its turret by the anchor chain when the battleship turned turtle and sank. We'll also visit the stern, which has been extensively remodelled by explosives during the salvage operations, and see the 2 massive rudders that dominate the hull. I'll also take you inside for a brief taste of what it's like to penetrate this incredible wreck. Even this, though, is only going to scratch the surface of what there is to do. But hopefully it will give you a taste for why people come back and dive it year after year. So let's start off with those aft turrets, which in many ways are the poster boy for diving in Scapa, and the bit that pretty much everybody wants to see. We're descending the shot line to 38 metres, the deepest point of the wreck, and this is where most dive boats tie in, because they know everybody wants to see those aft turrets. What you're looking at now are turrets D and E, each originally mounted 2 305mm guns. That's over 12 inches of naval firepower. And because the ship lies upside down, these massive gun barrels are now pointing down into the seabed. Most of the barrels themselves are partially buried into silt, but you can still make out their enormous diameter. The crews for these guns were protected in 2 massive turrets, each of which boasts 30 centimetres of frontal armour, thick enough to withstand direct hits from enemy battleships. Now, because you're swimming beneath the wreck, buoyancy control is absolutely critical here. One careless fin kick and you'll stir up a silt cloud that will ruin visibility for everyone. Stay neutral, move slowly, keep your fins up. But take the time to understand the scale of these things. They are truly immense. Think what that was like not only for the people who built them, but also on the other wrecks, the similar wrecks to this in Scapa Flow that were salvaged. Just think of what it takes to do that. It was an unbelievable achievement, especially when you consider most of it was done in the 1930s. Also, of course, you have to think that these guns fired at the Battle of Jutland. They were used in anger, and they are unchanged since that moment in time. Truly a piece of history, and really easy to see why everybody wants to come and see this part of the wreck. Even little details like this. You can see above us here is the deck, and we're now beneath one of the turrets. That hatch there that's been illuminated by Bob, that is where shell cases would have been thrown out of the turret once they'd been fired. As we look down the side, you can see the size of the turret. The divers give it scale. It's amazing to think that 80 men would have been responsible for each turret. Incredible number. The next part is just as good in my opinion, because we're going to travel along the port side where we're going to see the secondary armament that the ship bristles with. These are the casemate guns, the famous gun run. The Kronprinz Wilhelm carried 14 150mm secondary guns, 7 on each side. Now, because she's lying slightly tilted over to her starboard side, the ones on the port side are perfectly positioned for exploration and photography. Personally, I think they're incredibly photogenic. This one, hanging from the ceiling, is a really good example. You can also see it's covered in life. It's an incredibly beautiful thing. Although you have to remember its original purpose whenever you look at something like this. Each gun is contained in a heavily armoured compartment, and these guns were designed to defend against torpedo boats and destroyers at closer ranges than the main battery could engage. What's really interesting about the guns is that to access them, you've got to travel over and under bits of the ship that have fallen down from above. Now, the reason it's fallen down from above is because the main armour belt was situated below, or now above, the ship, and that was salvaged. The reason it was salvaged is because it's got the famous subatomic steel on it, so really high quality, really valuable steel that was created before the first nuclear explosions, so isn't contaminated like every piece of steel that has been made since. That makes it useful for certain very sensitive applications, albeit I don't think there's a huge demand for it, and it's no longer possible to get it from Scapa Flow because all salvage on Scapa Rex is now prohibited by UK law. Commercial salvage did take place though all the way from the 1930s through to the 1970s. They blew off the armour plates and then would pick them up from the seabed, but in the process of blowing them off they also created a huge amount of much less valuable debris, and that's what restricts access to the guns. That's the stuff that you've got to go over and under. Some of them are more accessible than others, some of them are easier to spot, and it definitely helps if you've had somebody who's dived it before to show you the way. Trust me, they're all there though. It's just a case of finding them. Following the gun run forward takes us nicely to one of the most distinctive features of any Scapa Flow battleship, the armoured spotting top. And there it is. But before we get to the top itself, look at this, the armoured access tube. This is a vertical steel tube that allowed crew members to climb from the main deck up to the spotting position. And the reason it's armoured is critical, because the men using it were exposing themselves to all sorts of potential injury, but mainly from enemy shell splinters. Once they reached the top, they were performing one of the most vital jobs in naval warfare, spotting the fall of shot. And this is where the history happened. The Kronprinz Wilhelm fought at the Battle of Jutland on the 31st of May 1916, the largest naval battle of World War I. And the men stationed up here in this spotting top were the eyes of the ship and saw firsthand this incredible naval conflict. Their job was to observe where the ship's massive 305mm guns shells were landing, whether they were falling short, over or on target, and relay corrections back to the gunnery officers below. Without accurate spotting, those huge guns were firing blind and the shells were wasted. At Jutland, the Kronprinz Wilhelm was part of the 3rd Battle Squadron. It engaged British battle cruisers at range exceeding 18,000 metres. That's over 11 miles. At those distances, accuracy was super important, and that meant spotting the fall of shot was everything. Can you imagine being up here during that battle? The concussion from your own guns firing, enemy shells landing around the ship, trying to track shell splashes through smoke and spray while calling down corrections through voice pipes. The Kronprinz survived the Battle of Jutland with only minor damage, testimony to the skill of her crew and the quality of her armour. But it wasn't enough to stop it ending up at the bottom of the sea, and what we're going to see next is absolute tangible evidence of the trauma of the sinking. Because there's something absolutely extraordinary on the Alpha turret, the very forward turret, that you have to see to believe. This is evidence of something that happened during the actual sinking that's been frozen in place for over a century. Look at this, the anchor chain wrapped completely around one of the 305mm gun barrels, and this happened on the 21st of June 1919. As the battleship rolled and capsized, her massive anchor chains, each link weighing several kilograms, came loose and fell across the deck. The gun barrel caught the chain as the ship went over, and it's been wrapped round it ever since. The forces involved are absolutely mind-boggling. The ship weighed over 26,000 tons. When it rolled onto its side, everything that wasn't secured started moving. Equipment, anchor chains, ship's boats, the whole lot. This chain found the gun barrel in those final chaotic moments. What makes this so powerful is that it was completely accidental. Nobody tried to allow this to happen. It's just a snapshot of the exact moment that the warship died. The anchor chain that was meant to hold it in place, to keep it steady in harbour, became part of the final story and a really important visual reminder of the way it ended. Now, thinking about these turrets, each of them weighed over 600 tons and required a crew of 80 men, gun layers, loaders, rammers, magazine handlers, all working in precision. At Jutland, the Kronprinz Wilhelm engaged British battle cruisers, and her gunnery was accurate, contributing to the devastating firepower that sank the perhaps poorly named HMS Invincible. The rate of fire was around 2 rounds per minute per gun when the crew was well drilled. This means that the ship could throw 10 405 kilogram shells every 60 seconds at targets over the horizon. These guns fired their last shots in anger at Jutland in 1916. 3 years later, wrapped in their own anchor chain, they were silenced forever when the battleship settled to the bottom of Scapa Flow. Now, the bit of video that you're seeing at the moment shows the breach of the 305mm gun that has the anchor chain wrapped around it. It's been illuminated by the diver you can see on the right. We've also just seen the shell loading and handling mechanism on the left hand side, and that's one of the great things about this gun. Because it was ripped out and the roof was ripped out, you can actually see inside it and get to the breach. It's a fantastic thing to be able to do, although you're always aware that directly above is the remains of a massive battleship. What we're going to do now, though, is head to the stern. It's shallower than the bits that we've seen so far. It's also extremely unlikely that you would go there from the forward turrets. More likely, you'd either do it on a second dive or before or after a visit to those aft turrets. As you'd expect, the stern is where the ship's steering mechanism is located. It would also have had large amounts of the engine components, and that's why this was a favourite area for salvors. What they would do is they would drop down onto the ship and they would blow holes in the hull until they found things that were of interest. They would then expand those holes, recover the things, and move on to the next part of the ship where they thought they could find something else valuable. That means that large parts of the stern area not only are extensively damaged due to explosives, but stuff that is valuable, such as the massive bronze propellers, are long gone. Also, large quantities of the engine components are missing as well, although if you search around inside you can see plenty of evidence of the 3 sets of Parsons turbines that drove the Kronprinz, providing 43,000 shaft horsepower, which was enough to ensure that the 26,000 ton battleship was able to reach speeds of up to 20 knots, fast enough to keep pace with the high seas fleet. You can also see the rudders, which are askew due to the explosives. These were essential at Jutland, as rapid course changes and evasive action helped her avoid serious damage whilst concurrently engaging the British battle cruisers. Because it's shallower, has more light, and there's a greater current flow over the top of it, this area is also a haven of life, so if that's your thing, there's plenty of stuff to see. That's not really my thing though, but what I do like to do is go inside wrecks, and the size and the scale of the Kronprinz mean that there is a huge amount of potential to do that. As always with any wreck penetration, it needs to be done properly. You need appropriate training, you need to carry out reconnaissance, you need to lay lines and all that kind of stuff. But for those of you who have those qualifications, for people who like to do it, it is absolutely incredible. The ability to get inside a wreck of this scale, to move around, to see the different compartments, to see the evidence of the vast amount of stuff that would have been inside there, well, it's just incredible. And for the people who come back year after year, this is what an awful lot of them like to do. Get inside, swim round, explore new places, find new things, and because the wrecks are decaying and changing continuously, that means new areas open up all the time. In this video you can see that I've entered through a small hatch. It's about halfway up the wreck on the port side, and I'm heading towards the bow. You can see that somebody has already laid line, and that was done on the previous day. The divers that you saw at the beginning of the video showed me where this is, and you can see that I'm now inside it. I'm completely inside the wreck. Above me is just the hull. Below me you can see there's large amounts of stuff has collapsed down onto the seabed. It's absolutely amazing. There's so much room in here, and as you can see, all sorts of bits and pieces. This whole section was just full of interesting things. As you can see, there's also a whole load of room. My estimate is I travelled probably 50 or 60 metres inside the wreck, moving from stern or from the stern direction to the bow section, and then there was a big exit, a big opportunity to drop out of the wreck that took me very close to where the two forward guns are located. Now, I'm sure I don't need to tell you that this is great fun and really exciting, and the kind of thing I think that many of us, when we learnt to dive, dreamt that we would be doing. So I never went through this door, but there's definitely somewhere I'd like to go and have a look next time. And that's the thing with a wreck of this sort of size. There's always going to be something else you'd like to do, another place that you'd like to go to, or a bit that you've been that you'd like to go back and check again. And certainly I did 3 dives on the Kronprinz Wilhelm on my last trip to Scapa, and it's only really whetted my appetite. I'm pretty certain I could spend an entire week-long trip up there going on it and just going inside and going further and finding more things. It's that kind of wreck. Unfortunately, nothing can last forever, and this dive is one of them. So that's the end of the line there. That's the tie-off point of the bit of string, and the way out is just down the slope to the right-hand side there. And that's where I head to get out of the wreck and return to the surface. Ascending from a wreck like this is always an opportunity to review what you've just done, and also to think about the wreck itself. The Kronprinz Wilhelm, in many ways, many people's opinion, the best dive in Scapa Flow. It's certainly a ship with an unbelievable history. It participated at the Battle of Jutland on the 31st of May 1916. It was the largest naval battle of World War I and the greatest battleship on battleship engagement that's ever taken place. The Kronprinz Wilhelm fired her massive 305mm guns at British battleships. She took hits, she survived, but 3 years later she was sent to the bottom rather than let her fall into British hands. That anchor chain wrapped around the forward gun, that moment of chaos as she rolled and capsized, the turrets pointing into sand, the spotting top where range calculations were made, the casement guns that defended against torpedo boats, all still there. This is amazing diving. It's deep enough to require planning and skill, but shallow enough that you get a reasonable amount of time down there to explore, to understand exactly what you're seeing. This video has just been a taster, but I hope it's given you an appetite for this wreck, the SMS Kronprinz Wilhelm. König-class battleship, Jutland veteran, scuttled warship, and now arguably Scapa Flow's most impressive dive site. Thank you for joining with me. I'm Don Robinson, deep wreck diver. As always, I'll see you on the next wreck.